Hidden within the quiet walls of a French convent lived a woman unknown to history, but intimately known by heaven, Sister Josefa Menéndez. Born in 1890 in Madrid, her life was modest and filled with hard work. She didn't join religious life until later than most, yet she quickly became the vessel for something divine. While performing humble chores, washing linens, stitching garments, she began to claim she could hear the voice of Christ. More startling still, she said her spirit was taken to hell itself, where she witnessed the torment of lost souls firsthand. She wrote these terrifying visions down faithfully, recording every word, every cry, every plea. These writings became un appel à l'amour, a call to love, a book where the Sacred Heart of Jesus speaks, not to condemn, but to plead, to warn, and to embrace with mercy. She died in 1923, at the age of just 33. No crowd followed her funeral, no legacy of power remained, but her message endured. Through this humble nun, a call echoed. God wants to save, especially through the least expected. Josefa believed that spiritual warfare was not a metaphor, but a daily grueling reality. She saw the denial of hell not just as theological error, but as a dangerous illusion. In a time where people preferred to think of God only as gentle, she stood as a reminder that mercy doesn't erase judgment, it only makes it more urgent. Her hope was that by sharing what she saw and heard, hearts would be shaken awake, not just by love, but by the sobering reality of what's at stake. On the night of March 16th, around 10 p.m., Sister Josefa was once again confronted by a chilling presence. As before, it began with harrowing sounds, screams blending into one another, chains rattling in the dark. Fear surged through her. She rose from bed, dressed quickly, and dropped to her knees, praying beside the mattress. But the dreadful noises only grew louder, creeping nearer as though the unseen world was closing in. Unsure and shaken, she made her way to the superior's cell, seeking refuge, but returned when the oppressive sounds refused to leave her. It was then that she saw him, the devil himself, standing before her. With a commanding voice, he ordered her hands and feet to be tied. From that moment on, she lost all sense of place, her soul seemingly torn from the earthly world and dragged into a terrifying abyss. While in this state, Josefa heard sinister voices discussing her. One insisted that binding her heart, not her limbs, would be the only way to truly conquer her. But the devil snarled back. Her heart did not belong to him. Then she was dragged down a corridor that seemed carved out of despair itself, narrow, suffocating, and utterly dark. Blasphemies filled the air, voices crying out in filth and fury. Along the path, deep niches lined the walls, each spewing smoke, embers, and a vile stench that choked the senses. From within, tortured souls wailed against their own existence, cursing their own bodies, damning their parents, and weeping over the decisions that brought them to this place. At one horrifying moment, Josefa was struck violently in the stomach, a blow that stole her breath and resistance. Then, without mercy, she was shoved into one of those burning, suffocating cells. Inside that fiery niche, Sister Josefa felt as though her very being was being torn apart. Her flesh, she claimed, was pierced with burning needles, and an invisible weight crushed her from every side. But even this unbearable physical torture was nothing compared to the spiritual agony she described, the total, horrifying separation from God. That absence, she said, was the deepest torment of all. Around her the cries of the damned echoed. If they could offer even a single act of love, it would no longer be hell. But they couldn't. They were trapped in hatred, in disgust, in a desperate thirst for a love they could no longer reach. Often, in these visions, the devil would command that she be tormented further. But the spirits of hell would answer that they were limited. Her body bore the marks of Christ, and certain areas could not be touched. Still, what they were allowed, they inflicted. They forced her to drink sulfur, scorched her with fire, and tried to crush her spirit. Yet the parts of her body she had consecrated through penance, those remained off limits, protected. In the midst of this suffering, Josefa also witnessed other souls punishing themselves. Hands that had stolen were now instruments of torment, eyes and tongues that sinned now consumed in pain. Bodies once given over to pleasure now writhed in endless regret. She observed that most of the condemned were there for sins against purity, acts of theft, and dishonest dealings in business. Again and again she heard their laments, curses against the choices they made, the temptations they followed, and the precise moments that sealed their eternity. At times, the torment intensified to a horrifying degree. Josefa recounted moments when the demons tried to rip out her tongue, unleashing a pain beyond human comprehension. Her eyes, scorched by infernal fire, felt as if they were ready to burst from their sockets. There wasn't a single part of her body that escaped. Every inch, even the smallest fingernail, was seized by agony. The condemned lay flattened, unable to move, trapped in a relentless state of burning torment. The air was thick with blasphemies, wails, and screeches, and the stench, an unbearable blend of charred flesh, tar, and sulfur, made even breathing feel like punishment. In one of her most terrifying accounts, she described what seemed like hours of torment, years in sensation. Yet she emphasized, even the most vivid words she could write were only a pale reflection of the true horror experienced by a soul in hell. The abyss, she said, was filled with new arrivals, many of them people who had lived in wealth, obsessed with pleasure and appearances. The devil, amid the howls of the damned, bragged about his victories, how he had ensnared these souls with temptations of vanity and indulgence. But when he lost a soul to mercy, his rage was explosive. He commanded his legions to stir fear and despair in the hearts of the living, to convince them they were beyond forgiveness. In another vision, Josefa was taken to a darker region, lit only by a sinister red fire at its center. Around it, demonic spirits conferred, whispering strategies for corrupting the living. Their mission was clear: to infiltrate hearts with ambition, sensuality, and indifference. Always acting from the shadows, they sought to poison without being seen. In this same place, she saw a 15-year-old girl, writhing in anguish, hurling curses at her parents, not for abuse or neglect, but for never teaching her to fear God. She confessed that her path to damnation began with small compromises, especially, the girl said, from reading impure books that opened the door to greater sins. In another vision, Josefa was horrified to see not only lay people but also religious men and women condemned in hell. She recognized souls of priests and nuns, individuals who had once dedicated their lives to God, yet now they were tormented for having betrayed their sacred vows. Some had desecrated their ministry through scandal and hypocrisy, others had misused offerings meant for the Mass, and some were even involved in clandestine societies working in secret against the Church itself. Their fall, she wrote, brought not only shame but deeper punishment, as their betrayals carried more weight in the spiritual order. In one of the most disturbing experiences, Josefa described her own soul being drawn toward the abyss, not by force, but as if by choice. It was as though something inside her wanted to escape God's presence completely, to plunge into the darkness and join the chorus of curses rising from the damned. She wrote about the strange pull to hate, the twisted desire to reject God and embrace despair. Her agony only grew when she noticed others rejoicing in her suffering, damned souls who took pleasure in watching her pain. And the more they cursed, the deeper their thirst for blasphemy became. It was a cycle with no end, no relief, a hunger for hatred that could never be satisfied. Although these were visions, Josefa insisted they weren't mere nightmares. She stressed that what she experienced and wrote down was only the faintest shadow of the reality. No language, she said, no human concept, could fully capture the depth of horror, pain, and loss that a soul endures in hell. It was not meant to horrify for horror's sake, but to awaken the living, to warn, to shake souls from indifference. And so, my brothers and sisters, this is the harrowing vision of hell experienced by Sister Josefa Menéndez, not given to frighten, but to awaken. These revelations are a cry from the depths, urging us to take seriously the eternal consequences of our choices. Without the sacraments, we walk unarmed. Through a battlefield, they are not optional. They are our defense, our lifeline, our way back to God. Let us not delay. Examine your conscience with honesty. Return to confession with a heart that truly repents and desires change. God's mercy is not far. It is waiting, always, but it must be accepted. We were not created for torment, but for the eternal embrace of the Father. The time to choose is now. Choose heaven. Choose mercy, while it is still today.